As Guyana sits on the economic and political crossroads, we speak to the nation's opinion leaders and decision makers to get their views on the challenges the country faces and the path it must take to achieve national development. Welcome to Nation Watch. Now here is your host Mervyn Williams, former member of the Guyana Parliament.
Hello and welcome to today's edition of Nation Watch. My name is Mervyn Williams, your host. Nation Watch for today, 27th August 2023, will be a little bit different. Tomorrow, the National TOSHAO Council meets. The NTC is the elected body of representatives of the indigenous peoples all across Guyana. Tomorrow, the indigenous peoples of this country will have their say on the number of issues. The troubling fact is, however, that it is evident and glaringly evident that the indigenous leaders themselves may not have had an opportunity to contribute to the formulation of the agenda for its NTC Conference 2023. There are a number of issues, troubling issues, across indigenous communities in Guyana, particularly management of resources. There are reports all across Guyana, starting in Region 1 in Wauna, massive allegations of corruption with respect to village funds. In the Reverend community in Aruka, Sacred Heart community, they have tremendous problems with accountability issues. They are in fact asking for the removal of their leader in that community. Over in Region 2 in Wakapao, residents have petitioned the Minister of Marine Affairs calling for the removal of the entire village council and its TOSHAO. All across the country, there are tremendously frightening reports of the absence of accountability and corruption is rampant. Over in Region 10 in Malali and in Bururu, there are allegations of massive spending with zero accountability in Monkey Mountain in Region 8. In all of the regions, there are troubling reports. Outside of that, however, we are now going to have a conversation today with some of the leaders from the Rupununi region, Region 9, regarding their expectations of NTC 2023, among other issues. I'd like to introduce to you my guests today on Nation Watch, starting from my left, Mr. Ivor Marslow, who is an active member of the North Rupununi District Development Board, NRDDB. Next to him is Mr. Mike Williams, radio personality, farmer, village leader, in the TOSHAO of Anai. And Anai is that cluster of 7 villages which fall under his leadership directly. We have a problem, however, we've been cautioned that we do not put a mic in Mike's hand, so we put it on the table today. And next to him is Mr. Bertrand Alicott, who is senior counselor for the village of Surama. You will recognize the names Alicott and Surama very easily. Mr. Bertrand Alicott is the younger brother of Vice President Mr. Sidney Alicott, who served Guyana well from 2015 to 2020 as Senior Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs. His brother is following in his footsteps as Senior Counselor for Surama. And Micah, Mr. Micah Davis is the TOSHAO of Toka in the North Rupununi as well. So, gentlemen, welcome to Nation Watch. Mike?
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Mike Williams from Anai TOSHAO. There are a lot of anxiety and expectations when the meeting starts tomorrow. Our trip to Georgetown started really bad. Our vehicle were broken down. However, we were able to meet 4 o'clock this morning. One of the issues that we would like to resolve, but NTCP brought on the table, is recently part-time workers were introduced to the North Rupununi, including in my village. And also on that same very day, there was the small grants being given to people. Oh dear, we are aware that $200,000 were given to the people in the course, and $100,000 party members. I would want to say party supporters.
And this, which party is this?
That's PPP.
Okay.
At the government of the day now, yes. One of the things is that about a month and a half ago, Small Business Bureau was in Anai, where they were training us and telling us access, how we can have access to these grants through Small Business Bureau. And one of the things that were keeping our people from getting access to these funds was NIS compliance. Our people were unable really to bypass that NIS compliance. And now through that same Small Business Bureau, $100,000 are given to start small business. So the question is, what happened to the NIS compliance? And we are aware that there's food shortage in Region 9. So the $100,000, some people use that $100,000 to buy ration for their homes. So when you talk about accountability, how do these people now report on how the money is spent? That's not a business; it's livelihood now, right? So we would need some answers whenever the topic comes up.
I am looking at the theme for the NTC conference. It says advancing sustainable village development in a low carbon economy. Kind of contradicting to me because here we are in a country awash with oil money, and we have a government that seeks to give out handouts at every turn in indigenous communities to the extent that people are no longer planting. People have already resigned to relaxing and waiting for money to come so that there will be food shortages. People not planting cassava anymore. Foreign will not be made in the quantities that are customary anymore. And people are going to be waiting for these monies. How, in those circumstances, outside of the discriminatory allocation of money to party hacks and so on, the fact that money is being distributed and people are walking away from the farms, how relevant, therefore, is this theme of advancing sustainable village development in a low carbon economy? I wonder if Bertrand would take a bite at this.
Good morning, Bertrand Arikat, Surama, Senior Counselor. With the indeed with the handouts, with the sustainable livelihood of the people. I mean, it's a great initiative of giving people this money so that they could have. But then again, you're squeezing them in a position that you're not allowing them to execute in the right what they would like to have. You're having them in an area where you control the kind of control so that when this allocated money is finished, you got to come back to me, right? But for us, from my perspective, is that we should be given the allocated money that was given to us. We should be given the opportunity so that we could go into whatever farming and for food security. Because, as you rightly said, we now become dependent. And that is why we end up having the foreign is thing, I mean, to buy foreign now is a lot of money. The money that was allocated for business, you can't use it because to do the business because you got to buy ration with it. I know with this, as TOSHAO said earlier, with this money come through small business bureaus, my wife had the opportunity to apply, and the amount of things, the prices you had to go through, you had to do all these things before you could have been certified to get this money. But this, is just handout. And then you, and just the other day, I've got to understand that they're coming to check on your business that you was given this money for. And as TOSHAO said, this is the money that was given to them. They don't have anything, so they buy the Russian.
Yeah.
You know, it was for me, it wasn't explained to the people of the right uses of this money.
Or there was no plan behind the distribution in the first
Right.
place.
So that is how we end up right up, because when I got the message of all these handouts, the money that was supposed to be was the day before the people. And this wasn't the council or the people's selection. This list come from, I don't know from who, but it came into us. So the next day was they had to go out to let them. So I told the people, well, your name is on the list. Go and hear for yourself what is this all about. So they did went. People did got through with their money. But as you rightly said, it wasn't explained to the people properly. So they came back. They know they get money. They don't have ration. They don't buy the ration. So now when the people come to do the evaluation and see how you're doing with your business, there's
No business. I've heard there's a cultural shift. You are a traditional man. You have worked in your own indigenous community and well beyond. This thing is causing a cultural shift, if not shock, that seems to me that it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to repair. Now, you have a tradition of planting in indigenous communities. You have a tradition of collective cleaning of villages in indigenous community. You have a culture of what my people, the Caribbean people call the kayak, where people come together and mash it, right? So you clear lands for planting. Everybody come to this person's place, clear the land, and everybody goes to the next person, clear, and so on. Now, these Pende workers and these handouts are causing what I see as a cultural shift, if not shock, because no longer are indigenous communities benefiting from collective cleaning of villages, group work to fix the ball field, group work to fix a fence, group work to fix the village office. Everybody now will be sitting and waiting, well, how much you paying? And so that culture is being destroyed. This culture is being destroyed by people who obviously do not understand the culture and who clearly do not care about the harm that they're doing future generations of indigenous peoples. What's your reaction to that?
I absolutely agree with that. And I think it would cause a lot more issues that it would exacerbate the issues that were brought up by TOSHAO and Mr. Bertrand in terms of food security, because people are now earning a little bit of money, and that's all they're doing. They're no longer planted. Like you said, people don't want to go out to do self-help anymore. And it's been encouraged in some parts. Like, why should you do self-help and you're getting money? You should get paid to do this stuff. But I personally feel that's taken away from what we're used to doing, coming together to getting work done. And, you know, it gives people another excuse to not do very much, right? Because with the part-time jobs, that's all people do. They don't have a farm, they don't plant, they're not finding the time to do it because all their time is taken up with, you know, these odd jobs that they have to do. I think if it is well planned, we might have some good work from them, but it needs to be vested in the village council, and we find that a lot of these initiatives have not been initiated by the village councils themselves, that they don't have, you know, yes, they're being told, okay, these people come to you, you supervise them, but there was never a real plan as to how it's going to work. How are you going to put somebody to work in an office and they've never had that experience. How could they support somebody and they don't have, the skill to support them when you're calling them support officers? Instead, you need to teach them everything before they could actually do something. And some of these people feel they're bigger than the village council, and I have a real problem with that.
Micah, in your village, we've been getting reports from villages across the country that the expectation with respect to these part-time jobs was always that the village council would identify the persons most in need of employment, most in need of the money that the employment opportunity will avail to them. However, to the contrary, we are hearing that village councils have been given lists, as I were just averted to. They've been given lists of persons and they've been given instructions. I don't know that village councils could be instructed, but somehow this is happening now. Say, look, here's a list of X number of persons. You go out and they will be coming to you to do part-time work and you have to supervise them and you have to pay them. Has this been happening in your village? And if it has, are you, as TOSHAO of your village, comfortable with such an arrangement, or do you have a preference for the traditional way of the village council determining what should be done in conjunction with the villagers?
Yeah. So at the village, we did have came up with an issue because, like you rightly said, there was a list of names that were submitted. It came not from the CDOs or DDOs, but some private or some party member, especially the part-time workers. And those people, some of them, until now, those party names that were on the list that supposed to obtain the grant did not upload their grant. I'm going to find out how will they access the grant. There was no response until now. That there were about 10 persons who supposed to access the grant from TOSHAO. And out of that 10, only 3 persons did access the grant. So the remaining balance of that funds, there is no answer to where that thing only would access. Also, in terms of the village council selected persons to be part of that part-time worker, it was a challenge because persons were put in place that we knew is already benefiting from some sort of income, and people who didn't really need that funds at the time. And when the list came, it's something you have to work with. And later on, it became an issue in our village generally. So we prefer selecting persons and not names if that opportunity ever surfaces again. And I think that's the way we should go forward. It's the village council who is responsible for the village, and not people setting names who have already been selected. Even in our list for grants, some person doesn't get and run names appear not on the documents.
But that's very interesting. Dead people on voters list, dead people on lists to receive grants. It becomes a little bit more complex. So these instructions, have you been able to determine where they're coming from? And has the village council had a discussion as to whether it goes the way that the village wants it to go, whether there'll be consequences, or because you're put in a bad position here, tight spot, as we say. Your position here is that the village looks at you as the TOSHAO. The village looks at the village council as its leadership, which it elected, and they see you as the people who are employing these part-time workers. And so they believe that you, TOSHAO and village council, are giving work to people who really don't need it, while overlooking these persons who have a dire need. So it puts you in a difficult spot. If you were to run back for office tomorrow, you may lose because people reject you, not understanding clearly what you have been put through.
Yeah, because days after they had some memo reaching the administrators of the school for those part-time workers of the contract. And for the health section, there's no memo sent around. So it's kind of very confusing because some memos are coming in for different part-time workers, like the education part, the health part. But what are the rest supposed to do in terms of their contract? We have, like, for instance, for the social services, we at the village council have to delegate those persons to be able to carry their function. As the village council, we see it more fit, right? This is something on the surface at our community policing group meeting. Right? These people saw a bigger purpose than those part-time workers to get in the patrol or even the village council. It's voluntary work, carrying out the same duties, and they're from a group of persons who get paid to do the same thing that the village council is supposed to do, or the community policing group, which is doing a great, it's benefiting the village a lot, and it's also voluntary. So that was the issue that actually surfaced at the village general meeting, because how can a part-time workers get paid? And there are these groups out there who started years ago and still up to now cannot get at least a stipend to carry the function, which we see it more fit for them to be operating on a back of for the village council. So that kind of creates like you rightly said, if there's a next storm coming up again, people might be viewing it from a different angle.
It appears to me, from where I sit, that these handouts, these cash handouts, are really doing a disservice to indigenous communities. It's causing division, it's causing mistrust, it's destroying tradition, it's creating an unnecessarily high level of dependency, and it's breaking away from traditions in terms of culture, agriculture, community efforts, and other traditional activities. I want to shift the focus a little bit away from that to some rights issues. Chinese landing is in trouble. Chinese landing was titled in 1976, as was Anai, I believe. And some years later, after the government changed in 1992, mining rights were given to a private company for mining operations in Chinese landing. Some lawsuits emerged, court actions were heard at all levels, and so on. And now, during that time, Chinese landing was not given the opportunity as owners of the land to have their say in court. And the matter was determined in favor of the mining company. Now we are at the stage where Chinese landing took a petition to the United Nations Human Rights Commission, which has given the government again some instructions regarding the issue, to go in there to investigate, to see what's happening, and to report, and so on. Now the government is playing this issue down, but it's a huge issue. It's an issue where people who own the land cannot venture onto the land because miners have more rights than the landowners. Buildings are being pulled down, equipment is being taken in there with under armed escort, roads are being destroyed, bridges are being destroyed, the land is being uprooted, and the indigenous Carib people, the Cariña people, they can do nothing. They're helpless because the law is not on their side. The title seems to have no weight as far as the government is concerned, and everything seems to be against them. That's a background. Now, TOSHAO Orange Finance has written to all TOSHAOs on the NTC. I'm not sure if TOSHAOs around this table received a copy of the letter yet. But TOSHAO Orange Finance is asking TOSHAOs to offer him support tomorrow when NTC is convened. He is asking for an adjustment to the agenda of the NTC conference, so that Chinese landing will be given an opportunity to speak to this issue, which is a grave concern to them and which has implications for indigenous peoples all across Guyana and beyond Guyana. So I want to start with Ivor here. Do you see merit in TOSHAO Finance's request for inclusion on the agenda? Do you see it as a matter that's urgent enough to be given priority on the agenda as a separate issue from all mining and rights, other mining and rights issues? Or do you think it should just, flow in the normal conversation?
But I think it goes back to the development of the agenda in the first place. Like, what are the issues that people really want to talk about? And I know that the NDC probably is strong enough for issues that everybody want to talk about. But I think it's an opportunity for the two shows to really come together to see if this is something that is, could affect everybody. But then I think if it's like that, it's important enough to put it there because something set precedent, right? And I think
So you're too busy to read the Bible.
precedent was set in Chinese land to a very bad precedent that is giving a minor rights over title land, which they seem not to be able to retract, right? And even though the Chinese landing people have made a lot of representations, not only by them, but other groups as well, they have had very little recourse to any answer or, how are we going to move forward with this? And I think we could say the same thing with a place like the Synood,
Yes.
where the matter was taken to the Inter-American
Commission.
and that one was, the Synood was given
Favorable judgment.
favorable judgment, but has that judgment been, respected? So if we are using international organizations to help us, how do governments respond to that? A lot of times governments say, oh, we are the government and nobody can tell us what to do. But how does that relate to people like ourselves when we feel our rights are threatened, right? That it's not respected, right? So I think TOSHAO has a very valid point, and I would really like to see something, come out from his request.
TOSHAO Mike, there are also problems in the Marudi mining district. I'm not sure how familiar you are with it since you have a really large responsibility in the north. But two questions for you here, Mike. One, would you support the call from TOSHAO or in Finance for support for an agenda adjustment to include a special slot in the time sheet there for Chinese landing to speak to their issues, to bring national and international awareness to the crisis in Chinese landing? And secondly, how do you view the domination and control of the Marudi mines, the Marudi mining district, to the exclusion of the indigenous Wapichan people from that particular area? They are not being allowed to mine freely. They're not being allowed to do anything there. And in fact, a single businessman who is style chairman of a co-op society is dominating, controlling, directing, determining who can and who cannot work. Comment, please, quickly TOSHAO Mike on those two issues, please.
I think, yes, indeed, the agenda need to be adjusted because these are technical issues where the indigenous people and their land is concerned. And I think it should be given a priority for us as TOSHAO to discuss it for once and for all. Because if we leave it, if it is not included in the agenda, then it will be still in the ear of people still crying and complaining. But I think they deserve it. and also with South people. We think that it's unfair not to allow them. It's livelihood we're talking about, right? And I think that these two land issues, mining issues, should be given priority. I'm quite sure that the rest of the two shows will support. But from me, I would support it fully, 100%.
Bertrand, you are familiar with the Chinese landing issue, and how do you see TOSHAO or in finance's request? Why is such a request necessary in the first place? Why did those people who formulated the agenda not see it as being necessary to include a time slot for Chinese landing to discuss this very, very important issue? If the indigenous leaders of the NTC were involved in crafting this agenda, why did they not see the importance of including this particular issue in the agenda in the first place, and saving the TOSHAO the time of having to make an appeal for the time?
Yes, since the last NTC, that was a cry from TOSHAO, and I fully agree. If we could remember, this is National TOSHAO's Council, and this is where the indigenous people has to voice their concern, has to make plan, because this is indigenous, and a lot of time we weren't given the opportunity to execute and to share our knowledge with our brothers concerning our development, because we are being held in a small position in pockets and it's been controlled. I feel to myself, and I was talking to my brother, that the TOSHAO, National TOSHAO's Council, we supposed to have time, all the TOSHAOs together to bring our issues to the table so that it could be resolved there. This, I think, this is the time when all the TOSHAOs sit and help each other to work to find the best solution to sometimes my little or our way of doing our stuff in my village, going about getting things done, organizing, might help the individual when he goes back. Some of my things could be fit into his things so that we could go forward. But I agree and I support TOSHAO
Or in finance?
or in finance of tabling this. This is supposed to be one of the thing on the agenda so that we could think also. Our thing too is Anai. Anai was a district.
Yes.
So why change it? We need Anai to become like a district instead of a village.
Yeah.
Also, just going back to TOSHAO, yes, they use the policing. Those are the people that we need to support because their lives in threat. You know what? We need to have this, and I agree with TOSHAO. We could have this on the agenda. Let us work together with him to see the best solution towards clearing the air. But remember, this is our land. You know, and we need to, even if you think, let us sit down and discuss. In everything, we need to discuss. Let us, so that when the day is out, we must be satisfied with our decision. So with this, I support TOSHAO so that we could table this put this on the agenda so that we could work out things.
You tune to Nation Watch. I'm Mervyn Williams, your host. We are discussing indigenous issues. I have with me 4 indigenous leaders of long and good standing, and we are having this conversation on the eve of the commencement of National TOSHAO's Council Conference tomorrow. Micah, the National TOSHAO's Council is the National Assembly of Indigenous Peoples of Guyana. It is the National Assembly of Indigenous Leaders of Guyana. The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People gives indigenous peoples the world over the right to free, prior, and informed consent. We style it FPIC, the acronym FPIC. Free, prior, and informed consent is a right. Self-determination is a right enshrined in international conventions for indigenous peoples the world over. Here we are on the eve of NTC, and we are discussing the agenda for NTC, an agenda that ought to have been formulated by the indigenous peoples themselves. But here we are speculating about who it was that formulated this agenda, what was going through their minds, and why were the indigenous leaders not part of this whole process of establishing this agenda. And here it is, the startling revelation that a critical constitutional rights issue, a critical rights issue relating to land, rights relating to basic human rights, the right to live, the right to work, the right to freely enjoy the comforts of your property, all being violated in Chinese landing. And the TOSHAO of Chinese landing must now come and plead with the formulators of the agenda for space to discuss this issue, which potentially can affect all indigenous peoples across Guyana, particularly where mining lands exist. What's your view as a young leader of indigenous peoples on this issue?
As being a young leader, I from the last NTC, like you said, it was a plea from Chinese landing officials, right? To me, I think that should have been stated in for this agenda, and something that should have been there very seriously, because it will happen to any community, any other community. For example, we in Region 9, Toto, for example, have been facing same issue. And we know FPIC is the way forward. And there has been lands, private lands around land that have been issued to those private owners without the FPIC process. Right? And it's getting really, really disturbing to community members. So I do feel it for Chinese landing also, on the situation they're going through. So I think from my side, I would like to support what we should be pressing for. And like you said, it should not be something that we request for it. If they had used the FPIC to formulate the agenda, it ought to have been included properly in that agenda. And now here is Chinese landing to show requests for freedom for that to be part of the agenda, which I don't think is something that's a problem. And I think the rest of the show should support this leader. Like I said, there's other communities that will be facing this soon if we don't address it. And we've seen it out there in the North Economy. For example, wetlands in the North Economy. There's private lands being given out to owners, the persons out there, without any consultation with those communities. And I think the wetland is something that we in the North Economy is dependent on and is dependent on for our daily survival. Right? So if that process does not they do not follow that process, I think later on down the years, we'll put ourselves in some very, very serious situation that may develop something that we were not expecting, right? Because it's indigenous people, when we want something, we fight for it and we fight to get it. And I think being at this conference here, this NTC, I think we as leaders from all across Guyana should meet, as TOSHAO just said, meet as TOSHAO from around the country, and it's an opportunity for us to share ideas, issues and how to solve issues, so we can just table it to the government, table it to the president, so they understand our issues. But what we see happening now, it's a whole lot of segregation among different villages. We don't get to meet as TOSHAOs across the country, which I think is something that at least should have been slated in the agenda also as an hour for us as TOSHAOs to meet and share ideas, problems, and see how we can solve them, so that we come as the real entity to present it with what.
Have you raised the issue of the wetlands? I know TOSHAO Mike Williams and his colleagues at the NRDDB in particular, I believe you were involved as well in conversations regarding the wetlands of the North Rupununi and the expression of the desire of the people of the North Rupununi to have those areas declared protected areas for the particular reasons that you have ventured. Sustainable livelihood, that's where you get your food from. That's one of the mitigators against climate change. It is, Guyana is in a bad place, the world is in a bad place in terms of the effect of climate change and what it's doing to the world. And you're not sure that private developers will value the wetlands as indigenous peoples do. You know for sure that they wouldn't treat and care it the way indigenous peoples do. And you do not know whether you will have access to those wetlands to get food after private individuals take them up. Do you see this as an agenda item for the NTC conference as well, that should be given heavy-weighted importance for conversation purposes at the conference? Yeah.
Yes, indeed. It's still in the air. The people of the North Rupununi are still ambitious up to now. Luckily for us, that's why I was here. We're doing a presentation there, and a part of it will focus on the North Rupununi wetlands. So I'm not quite sure how that reached the agenda, but it's in the agenda for NIB to do a presentation. They did not have any topics, so that is what we will present to them.
I see. So there's just a slot for the NRDDB.
Yes, a slot special for NIDD.
Also, you would capitalize on that to discuss wetlands.
Well, it's not only wetlands. There's a couple issues that we have been working on for a long time, even with the past government. Wetlands is one of them, but there's also the Alpine Management Plan.
Right.
We have a inland fisheries policy, which
That started about 5 years ago.
Yeah, but the North is the pilot for that program, right? Indigenous people's culture is not going to change tomorrow. On all of these things that we're talking about, like rights and use of natural resources, people depend on these issues for livelihood, right? Daily livelihood. And all of them are interrelated. Take, for instance, indigenous knowledge of this is also something that's important to us. And it should be for all indigenous people, right? So all of those things, we want to see how we can get everybody's attention to hospital.
Bertrand, the fishing side is your thing, isn't it? The catch and release fishing and the tourism fishing and so on.
No. Riva.
Yeah. But I know the Alicop family was deeply involved in advocating for the fishing policy alongside of the NRDDB and so on. So I imagine you'll be looking forward to that presentation as well.
Yes, because that's one of the things that the North Money Development Board, they have a fish management team that which is Kevin Edwards is part. He's a
We had drafted laws for that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is what the NRDDB would be presenting. Thursday, they would be presenting.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that's one of the areas, that's one of our main concerns today.
All right, we got a few minutes remaining, and there's a little bit of an emotional issue that I want to discuss very briefly. The organizers of the NTC have brought the leaders, indigenous leaders, out for NTC conference, which spills over into Heritage Month. Um, Obviously, there's a strategy attached to it, which we wouldn't want to discuss at this time. That'll take some time, but it's very interesting. Now, Heritage Month comes shortly after a major tragedy which affected the indigenous community of Guyana. There was a tragedy in the town of Madia where 20 young indigenous peoples died, 19 of them girls. There was a fire. It was reported that the place was heavily grilled and padlocked, and the walls had to be broken for persons to be brought out from that inferno. Um, Heritage Month is usually a month of celebration. I know Mike is emotional about the departure from the traditional and the original establishment principles, the founding principles of Heritage Month celebration and so on. But heritage has departed from the cultural side to the festive side, so to speak. Do you gentlemen see any need whatsoever for a more sober approach to Heritage 2023, where we focus more on introspection, where we focus more on reflection, and no need for such toning down, and maybe just a regular Heritage Month set of celebrations? And maybe I start with the youngest of the group.
Yeah, I think that is not there. Um, like I said, we're moving away from the real essence of what the heritage celebration is about. And here we have a couple days after this, or the morning after this big tragedy. I think there should be, a more celebration, memorial, something for the indigenous um, children and that's gone, right? Because those family we cannot repay them, right? No matter what we do, try differently, you cannot repay them. And there you are with one big celebration, forgetting about the pains that those families are still going through. Um, so probably it should be even in all the different celebrations in a different area, some recognition, um, memorial recognition to these young children that has passed on in that tragic matter.
Bertrand?
Yes, that is why we at the ANI 5 villages decided not to have the ANI district story, but we would have our little village activities, not as much, not very much, but we try to tone it down a little. Because for us, since Ramo
Regional response mechanisms, care, custody, and contact of our children in a dormitory facility no one responsible for these areas has been held accountable. No one has been held responsible for that tragedy. If you would be willing to comment on that, and secondly, to give your views on the whole question of how do we observe Heritage 2023. Bertrand has already spoken about the toning down in Anai. Maybe your extended views would also be welcome.
Okay, with the Maja and Maja especially, I think the system failed us, and nobody wants to accept the system because of the system we had there and then. Right? If there was no grills, if the doors were not padlocked, we would not have had so much death of children. But the system is there, which is very bad, right? Not sure how they're going to deal with it now. Like the other schools that are building, not sure we're going to do it. But we hope that, I'm hoping that somebody can be held accountable. The system, how do we fix the system? And nobody wants to admit to the system. The poor child who set the fire is being blamed.
Who allegedly set the fire, actually. I don't think any evidence to that effect has emerged quite yet.
Yeah, so that's very bad on that part. For heritage, I was telling a few TOSHAOs, heritage started in Anai. Heritage was taken from Anai to became regional celebration. After regional celebration, it is now a national thing. And for us, I've been telling my TOSHAOs, that's before we made the decision at the beginning. It is time for us to reflect. It's about 22 or 23 years heritage started. What have we gained thus far from the celebration? Was this the vision of the leaders then? What had we wanted to achieve? Have we achieved anything at all? We should sit and reflect. Where did we go wrong? How can we fix the wrong? Where is the direction now? Where are we going to take this heritage celebration? Do we celebrate? To me, it has become a business activity. Regional activities you hardly find. Of course, this year you may not find carving, but you find all those beer and this. You find more of that. And it is going to be worse the same year because people don't have nothing to out. And I have been saying, I've been tying over this thing by myself. If there were so many wrongs on the direction of this heritage celebration, why don't we forget about that? The big celebration nationally and give the indigenous people a national holiday. So we have 1 day of celebration instead of 1 month. That's my thinking, right? So that we only have a day. Maybe we would not have any more regional thing, because I am really skeptical about it, and it's hard to mention it over here. That I told my counselors, and it sounded bad as a leader, that this year I would not support heritage celebrations, especially the pageant, because of the allegations of rape to a pageant then. If our pageant was rape and all of these things, if it is true that it happened to one of our pageant that year, I don't think the leaders with the right senses could really now celebrate like before. That's my thought on it.
Final thoughts from Michael Williams, Mike Williams, TOSHAO of Anai. My guests today have been Ivor Marslow of the NRDDB, Michael Williams, TOSHAO of Anai, Mr. Bertrand Ali Cock, Senior Counselor of Suram Village, and Micah Davis, TOSHAO of Toka. We have been discussing Indigenous issues. Tomorrow is the NTC conference. We wish all our Indigenous leaders the very best as they enter that facility to have conversation with each other, to deliberate on matters, to make decisions in the best interest of all Indigenous peoples across Guyana. May they have the strength to do so as independent thinking leaders, representatives of our Indigenous peoples, and not persons influenced by political interests. Gentlemen, I wish you all the very best for the conference starting tomorrow. And I offer my kind regards and compliments to all of our village leaders all across Guyana as you go into your conference tomorrow. This has been today's edition of Nation Watch. We're outside today. My name is Mervyn Williams, your host, wishing you God's greatest blessings. Until we meet again, so long.
As Guyana's